Just think about it. Before she could respond, Enzo took a bold step forward, brushing his fingers against her arm. It felt like electricity coursing through her, igniting a spark that enveloped them in warmth. He leaned closer, and the world outside faded, a distant echo of problems forgotten. Enzo, she murmured, but the words trailed off, lost in the whirlwind of emotion swirling around them. Her heart thundered wildly as he brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the tender gesture sending shivers down her spine. I want more, Tonja, he admitted, his breath hitting her face, mingling with the scent of coffee and possibility. In that moment, the entire city could have crumbled around them, and it wouldn't have mattered. The weight of her fears hung in the balance as his lips brushed against hers, tentative at first, like a question posed, and she found herself answering, deepening the kiss, drowning in the sweet promise of it all. The kiss resonated with an urgency that eclipsed their doubts, two souls intermingling against the odds. As they parted, their foreheads touched, and both realized they were suspended on the edge of change. Whatever happens next, Enzo whispered, tracing a finger along her jawline, his eyes earnest and fierce. We'll face it together. In that moment, Tonja felt that the threads holding them together were stronger than any force threatening to tear them apart. Yeah, together, she echoed, her heart pounding with newfound hope. The future loomed vast and uncertain, but for now, they stood entwined ready to face whatever tangled threads awaited them. Scene 73 cover motives. The night had fallen heavy over the city, and the underbelly of its existence pulsed with an electric energy. Tonja Coleman, dressed in dark jeans and a fitted black top, crept through a narrow alley, her senses alive to every sound and scent. The distant hum of traffic was punctuated by the echo of muffled voices, laughter mingling with the clink of glasses from the syndicate's hideout just a few yards away. She turned to Enzo Arnaud, who walked with an effortless grace beside her. Are you sure we want to do this? Enzo said, nudging her arm playfully. His dark eyes sparkled with a mix of mischief and concern. It's not like they're serving cocktails and appetizers in there. Trust me, I know, Tonja replied, her voice steady as they approached the door. She could feel her pulse quicken in anticipation, a mix of adrenaline and uncertainty swirling within her. We need to gather evidence, and if I can catch a glimpse of their operations. Or catch a bullet, Enzo interjected, feigning dramatic horror, but the underlying tension in his expression told a different story. She shot him a look that masked her own unease. Stay focused, okay? If we get caught. We won't, Enzo replied, brushing aside her words, yet his hands fidgeted with the hem of his jacket. But I get it. We both have things to settle with these people. With a quirk of her lip, Tonja pushed the door open, the hinges squeaking like a reluctant witness to their entry. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with a chaotic energy, laughter blending with the low hum of a jazz band in the corner. Shadows danced across walls adorned with vibrant street art, infusing the place with an eerie vibrancy that matched the intoxicating aroma of spiced rum and tobacco. They slipped into the crowd, weaving through tables filled with patrons unaware of the brewing storm. The couple spotted a group of men gathered around a central table, their laughter booming, punctuated by the occasional brash exclamation. Tonja's eyes were drawn to a familiar face. It was Ishmael Devereaux, the enigmatic strategist she had tangled with too many times before. She could see the weight of ambition etched into his features. Enzo noticed her distracted gaze. You're not thinking of... No, she interrupted, though the sharpness of her tone betrayed her uncertainty. We stick to the plan. A burly man nearby caught sight of her and smiled, tipping his glass in her direction, like a low-key challenge. Tonja offered a forced smile before turning her attention back to Enzo, who wore a mask of thinly veiled jealousy. Just another day in paradise, huh? He said with a casualness that fell short of its intent. Right, she agreed, glancing at him. The heat of his presence ignited something in her, yet the unspoken frustration hung in the air between them. Let's grab a drink, he suggested, clearly trying to drown out the heaviness of the moment. Tonja conceded, following him to the bar where their contact awaited. The bartender slid 2 glasses filled with a rich amber liquid toward them. Bottoms up, Enzo said, and for a fleeting second, the tension seemed to dissipate as they toasted before downing their drinks. Tonja savored the warmth spreading through her, a sharp contrast to the impending confrontation. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from the table they had been watching. Voices rose, angry and accusatory, and Tonja's instincts honed in on the source like a hawk spotting prey. Ishmael stood, his demeanor cool yet razor-edged, as he countered a burly man who pointed a finger menacingly in his direction. "They think they can cross us?" the man boomed, his voice laced with venom. "What are you, a pathetic child?" Ishmael shot back, remaining composed despite the threat. "You think you can scare me?" Tanja's heart raced. The crackle of conflict was inescapable, and as much as she felt drawn to Ishmael's magnetic intensity, she couldn't afford distractions. She turned to Enzo, her eyes pleading. "We need to." Before she could finish, Enzo stepped closer, a sudden vulnerability breaking through his bravado. "I don't want to lose you, Tonja," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of his words hung heavy between them. She softened, momentarily taken aback. "You won't. We're in this together," she assured, their proximity charged with tension. "But you need to trust me when things get chaotic." His expression shifted, mischief returning at the edges of his lips. "You know how I feel about chaos. It's my middle name." She chuckled, though the moment was too fleeting. The explosion of anger from the central table renewed her focus. "Get ready," she murmured, swallowing the lump of unspoken affection that threatened to spill over. As they steeled themselves for what was to come, the two were drawn closer, bound not just by the chaos around them, but by the vulnerability and trust they were beginning to forge amidst the violence. Within the flickering lights, a new understanding blossomed, a promise that would carry them through the storm ahead. Scene 74, Crisis of Faith. Tonja stood in the heart of her cluttered office, the flickering fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like the anxiety thrumming in her chest. Piles of case files were strewn across her desk, each a beacon of reminders that justice had its own timeline. Her fingers ran over an open file, warm paper crinkling under her touch, the weight of the unsolved cases pressing against her like a phantom. Enzo leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyebrows knitted together. The dim light accentuated the sharp angles of his face, revealing a seriousness that struck a chord within Tonja. "You've been at this for hours," he said, his voice low, almost a murmur amidst the chaos. "You need a break." "I can't," she replied, her tone edged with urgency. "There's too much at stake. I need to make sense of it all." She glanced up at him, her deep-set hazel eyes reflecting a storm of determination mingled with doubt. "Tonja." Enzo pushed off the doorframe and stepped into the room, his presence bringing an unexpected warmth. "Your powers don't just go away because you doubt them. You've faced worse." "I don't know, Enzo." She hesitated, the tension in her shoulders unfurling slightly as she exhaled. "What if I'm wrong? The last time I had a vision—" Her voice trailed off, memories crashing over her like dark waves. "You're not wrong." Enzo stepped closer, his familiar scent, a blend of cedarwood and something uniquely him, settling around them. He lowered his hands onto the desk, narrowing the space between them. "You feel them, those moments. They lead you." "Sometimes I wish I could turn it off," she admitted, her voice quivering with vulnerability. "It's like a curse, a silence spun in the air, thick with unspoken truths." Enzo's gaze softened as he leaned closer. "Or it's your strength. You just have to trust it and trust yourself." He reached out, taking her hand gently in his. His fingers were warm against her skin, electric and grounding at the same time. Tonja swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his gaze. In the depths of his dark eyes, she saw not just reassurance, but an invitation to let go, a tether that pulled her toward him. The world outside blurred, becoming nothing more than distant murmurs while their connection crackled with intensity. "The world is trying to distract you," he added, his voice a soft, emboldening caress. "But here, it's just you and me." "I'm scared, Enzo," she confessed, the words escaping like a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "What if I can't protect the people I care about?" He brushed his thumb over her knuckles, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. "You already have, and you will again." He leaned in, the allure of his closeness igniting a warmth in her core, quieting the tempest within. "Just don't shut me out. Not now." The weight of their shared history lay delicately between them, and in that moment, Tonja could feel a gentle pulse of something deeper, a yearning she dared not fully examine in the heat of the chaos surrounding them. I can't empty myself out completely, she whispered, torn between the overwhelming need to protect herself and the pull of her heart. He smiled, slow and deliberate, and it disarmed her. Then, let me in just a little. Let me be there when it gets dark. Tonja studied him, the outline of his perfect features shadowed by uncertainty, yet tinted with a soft kindness that promised understanding. She let her breath steady as she leaned in closer, finding the rhythm of his heart in the moment they shared. I need you, she murmured, captivated by the sincerity of those words as they danced between them. Always. His voice was barely a whisper, but its weight felt like a promise that would echo long after the chaos receded, like a promise she was beginning to trust again. Just then, a loud crash reverberated from the hallway, an urgent reminder of their fractured reality, and Tanja jolted upright, her heart racing. What was that? Stay here, Enzo commanded, his posture shifting from soothing to vigilant, his hand still clasping hers even in the face of impending danger. I'll check it out. No, we face it together. She pulled her hand free, the electric charge leaving a pang of loss behind. Whatever it is, we confront it, together. As she reached for the door, a flicker of doubt flared anew inside her, but Enzo's resolute expression steadied her resolve. Exactly how I like it, he said, a hint of playful determination lighting his eyes as they both stepped out into the unknown, hearts racing in sync, ready to face the storm together. Scene 75, Unraveled Threads. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting golden rays through the leaded glass of the small cafe, Miles Brew. The air hummed with the rich scent of roasted coffee and freshly baked pastries, creating a cocoon of comfort amid the tension crackling in its corners. Tonja Coleman fidgeted with her hair, pulling strands behind her ear, a habit born of nerves. Beside her, Rosie Santana stirred her tea, attempting to read the subtleties of the silence that lay heavy between them. Are you sure about this? Rosie asked, delicate brows furrowing as she eyed Tonja, who drummed her fingers against the table. It's just a conversation, Tonja replied, though the tight clench of her jaw betrayed her resolve. I need to know where he stands. Rosie leaned closer, the light catching her bold red lipstick. Knowing Ishmael can be a double-edged sword, you know that. Tonja glanced towards the entrance. A mix of relief and dread filled her chest. Ishmael Devereaux stepped inside, the door swinging shut behind him. He was clad in an understated navy blazer, the crisp white shirt beneath contrasting with the undeniable shadow of mystery that followed him. As he moved toward their table, the hum of conversation faded slightly, his strut commanding attention. Ladies, he greeted, his voice smooth and deliberate. He pulled out a chair without waiting for an invitation, his gaze lingering on Tonja. Hey, Tonja offered, feeling the weight of his eyes on her, both thrilling and terrifying. She resisted the urge to shift her focus to the intricate patterns on the tablecloth, instead meeting him halfway with a challenge hidden behind her calm facade. I assume this is about last night, Ishmael started, his tone even, but a flicker of something deeper shone within his gaze, intensity tangled with restraint. That's one way to put it, Tonja replied, mapping his expressions with keen interest. She almost smiled, recalling how together they felt the night before, warm and entwined surrounding the mysteries of their shared world. But that memory didn't overshadow the questions gnawing at her mind. From the corner of her eye, Rosie glanced around the cafe, noting another table nearby, bursting with animated laughter, a trio celebrating the week's close. The clinking of coffee cups punctuated the ambiance, each laugh like a reminder of the normalcy Tonja found herself fighting against. How do we keep unraveling this web? Tonja asked, focusing again on Ishmael, who leaned back, crossing his arms in that playful yet defensive manner of his. The syndicate is a multifaceted beast, Ishmael replied, his fingers tapping the table lightly, the rhythm betraying his usual composure. But every thread leads back to that night. A brief silence stretched, the weight of unspoken words brewing tension. Tonja felt the invisible ties binding them throb, an electric connection that transcended the tangled situation they found themselves in. Past feuds and grievances blended into the essence of their conversation. You orchestrated it, didn't you? Tonja stepped forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. You pulled my strings from the start. Ishmael's lips twitched at the corners, that enigmatic smile surfacing. You know I had my reasons, he stated, but his voice softened. I couldn't have anticipated what you would mean to me. I didn't plan for you to fill the gaps. Without realizing it, Tonja's breath caught, a band tightening around her chest. Their connection felt insistent, demanding honesty amidst the chaos. Behind the banter lay a vulnerability, raw and glaring, revealing a truth that echoed louder than their fears of the past. Did you ever think I might not fall in line like the others? She challenged, her tone layered with the unresolved tension dancing in the air like a caress. I hoped you wouldn't, Ishmael confessed, leaning closer now, the tempting warmth of his presence igniting something fierce and unapologetic within her. You aren't like anyone I've ever met. Your strength, it draws me in. Their eyes locked, an electric showdown of vulnerability and guardedness, the cafe around them fading into a blur. Even Rosie felt their energy shifting, leaning back slightly to let the two navigate this storm of unspoken feelings. Just then, a waiter approached, offering a tray with a polite smile, completely oblivious to the charged atmosphere hovering over the trio. Can I get you anything else? He asked, glancing between the three. No, we're good, Tonja said quickly, her gaze still fixed on Ishmael. As the waiter retreated, Tonja's heart raced, torn between the lingering question of whether trust remained within the fabric of their connection and the undeniable chemistry pulling them together. Ishmael, she whispered, her voice barely rising above the ambient noise of the cafe. The air thickened with intensity, each breath between them loaded with potential. Tonja, he replied, his voice unraveling into the moment, an invitation. Just as the emotional knot tightened further, the door swung open again, a bell chiming to announce its new arrival, jarring them from their private world and reminding them of the stakes that remained tied to their burgeoning relationship. Looks like the show isn't over yet, Rosie quipped, breaking the moment, her playful tone ringing sharp in the tension-filled air. Tonja exhaled, the reality of their situation crashing in with the intruders, and knew they had to tread carefully. Their discussion about the syndicate and everything it threatened wouldn't fade quietly, much like the connection unraveling between them. Scene 76. Guardians of the Past. Why did you really come back, Ishmael? Tonja's voice sliced through the hum of conversation at the local cafe, drawing the eyes of nearby patrons. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the buttery warmth of croissants, but the aroma faded beneath the tension brewing at their table. Ishmael leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming lightly against the oak surface, his expression inscrutable. You think this is about you? He shot back, with a flick of sarcasm masking deeper emotions. Tonja's deep brown eyes narrowed, simmering with a protective spark. It always comes back to that, doesn't it? You don't get to dictate how I feel about your choices. The cafe bustled with life around them, yet an invisible wall encased their conversation, leaving them in an arena of rising stakes. The silence between them hung heavy like summer humidity, each heartbeat amplifying the fierce undercurrent that connected and pulled them apart. Nearby, Rosie was eavesdropping, her fork suspending rather uncomfortably above her half-eaten scone. She shot a look at Max, a burly officer nursing his own breakfast. They really need to communicate better, don't you think? She muttered, struggling to suppress a grin. Max chuckled, his laughter rumbling like thunder, his bright red shirt clashing with his dark hair. Or get on with it. At this rate, we could start offering popcorn. Back at the table, Tonja propped her chin in one hand, exhaling sharply. How am I supposed to trust you, Ishmael, when every time you open your mouth, it's just more smoke? Her honesty hung in the air, raw and unapologetic. Ishmael leaned in, his voice dipping low, almost intimate, the tension weaving them closer. Because I'm not the only one holding secrets, Tonja. You think you've got it all figured out, but we both know that's a lie. You need me in this. The challenge lingered, igniting something within her. She opened her mouth, then closed it, fighting the urge to reveal the full depths of her psychic burden, the visions crashing like waves in her mind. Instead, she spat out, "Don't condescend to me. I'm here because of my commitment to this case, not because you're charming." Across the room, the cafe door swung open, clattering against the wall, ushering in a wave of wind that fluttered the pages of newspapers and ruffled hair. Alara, a local artist known for her vibrant murals, swept in with a burst of energy. Her laughter rang out like bells, immediately redirecting attention. "I hope I'm not interrupting a riveting soap opera here," she announced, freshly painted canvas bags slung over her shoulder. "Always a pleasure to see you, Alara," Tonja managed, the tension easing for a moment. The artist's presence was magnetic, and she had a gift for lighting up even the dimmest conversations. Alara approached, her green eyes sparkling with mischief. "You two look like you're about to draw swords. Can I be the calm in your storm?" "You don't want to get involved in this," Ishmael said, a ghost of a smile threatening to break through. "But knowing you, you'll try anyway." "Why not? Sleeping heroes who don't reconcile never save the day," Alara quipped, her fingers dancing in a grand gesture as if conducting an orchestra. She leaned closer to Tonja, whispering conspiratorially, "Maybe you need to let him in, even a little bit." "That's not a strategy I endorse," Tonja said, her brows furrowing. "I say embrace the chaos," Alara replied with a playful wink. As they spoke, the cafe began to swell with voices, laughter, and the clinking of cups. Yet the air around Ishmael and Tonja crackled with an energy all its own, their unfinished conversation thrumming with unresolved conflict and longing. "Look, Tonja," he said suddenly, voice dropping again, tension flickering back to the surface. "I made mistakes, but I'm not here to play games. You mean too much to me for that." His honesty dropped like a stone in the still pond of their standoff. Tanja's breath caught as she met his gaze. "Then prove it. Trust is built." "I'll show you," Ishmael vowed, his conviction igniting something that felt like hope against the tempest of their emotions. In the adjacent booth, Rosie and Max exchanged looks, the heat of the moment spilling over. "That was pretty serious," Max said, taking a sip of his coffee, oblivious to the lingering need for humor amidst their storm. "Works every time," Rosie replied, shaking her head in disbelief, but unable to hide her smile at her friend's fiery exchange. And as Ishmael leaned just a bit closer, the world around them blurred. Each word hung delicately between them, like a tether being woven anew, binding them to their shared past as shadows loomed over their present. Could love truly rise out of the ashes of their mistakes? The stakes had never felt higher. Scene 77. In the eye of the storm, the rain lashed against the windows of the cramped office as if trying to warn them of the chaos brewing outside. Tonja Coleman stood by the slanted glass, her tall figure silhouetted against the dull glow of the streetlight. She clenched her fists, feeling the cool metal of her badge against her hip, grounding her. Memories of the last case danced in her mind, visions of struggle and betrayal that whispered from the recesses, both frightening and familiar. Enzo Arnaud paced behind her, a restless energy radiating from his tall frame. "You're not listening," he said, his voice low and steady. "We need to regroup, Tonja. This is getting... I know." She pivoted sharply, her dark curls bouncing with the motion, her eyes fierce. "But we can't back down now, not when we're this close." Close, or recklessly chasing shadows? Enzo crossed his arms, an action laced with frustration. The air thrummed with unspoken tension, a cocktail of unease and undeniable chemistry. "Sometimes shadows are all we have," Tonja countered, her voice softening, an echo of vulnerability slipping through her armor. She stepped forward, the scent of rain-soaked asphalt and fresh coffee melding in the air between them. "My visions, they lead us to something bigger. I can feel it." "Your power isn't a game, Tonja." Chastened, his gaze dropped to the floor, as if seeking some unuttered round of truth in the wood's grain. "You have to be careful. You're playing with forces that could derail everything." "Am I?" she whispered, the confidence cracking enough for concern to seep in. "Or maybe I'm just trying to save us." Before he could respond, the office door burst open. Rosie Santana stormed in, her fashionably tousled hair drenched and her cheeks flushed. "Guys, you won't believe what I just heard," she exclaimed, water dripping from her coat, pooling at their feet. "Not now, Rosie," Enzo said, running a hand through his hair, clearly on edge. "We're in the middle of something." "No, you're in the middle of a disaster if you don't listen." Her voice pitched higher with urgency. "I overheard something at the diner. They're talking about you. Something big is going down." "It's always something big," Tonja replied, crossing her arms, her eyes now narrowing. "What specifically?" "Enough to make you reconsider your next moves," Rosie insisted, her expression a mix of seriousness and concern. There's a shipment slated to go out tonight. Illegal arms. They're connected to the crime syndicate you've been tracking. Great, just great. Tonja ran her fingers over her temples, eyes flickering back to Enzo, whose expression was a blend of focus and mounting concern. Let's get there before it's too late, Enzo stated, instinctively moving closer to Tonja, their shared resolve surging like the storm outside. She felt the warmth radiate from him, a stark contrast to the tension she could feel thundering in her chest. This could be our break, her voice lowered, a glimpse of fierce determination returning, but the connection between them felt palpably closer, almost electric. Or it could get us killed. Enzo's expression softened, vulnerability surfacing in his sharp features. I can't lose you. Not like this. He reached for her, and for a moment the chaos widened into silence. The weight of his fingers brushed against her arm, grounding her in the fleeting moment. They stood undisturbed, the rhythm of rain outside fading into a dull hum compared to the roar of emotion surging between them. Her heart raced, and she felt unbelievably drawn to him, the urge to lean closer overwhelming. Enzo. Just then, a deafening crash echoed from below, cutting through the intimacy like a knife. Tonja snapped back into focus, adrenaline pouring in. Get down. Get what? Rosie squeaked, thrown back into urgency as they moved into action. We need to go now, Tonja shouted, her instincts igniting a frantic energy. As they darted for the door, her fleeting connection with Enzo lingered, its absence palpable in their hectic escape. The rain kept falling, relentless as they plunged into the storm outside, shadows clashing with reality, and the dangerous chase only beginning. Scene 78. Moments of clarity. In the warm glow of the setting sun, the kitchen hummed with the comfortable banter typical of Rosie's chic apartment. Deep blue walls, adorned with intricate art pieces, contrasted with the vibrant red of the tomatoes sizzling in the pan. The aroma of garlic laced the air as Tonja Coleman, tall and athletic, moved with a practiced grace, savoring the lively atmosphere around her. Tonja, you sure you want to do this tonight? Rosie asked, leaning against the counter, her arms crossed over her chest. Her dark curls bounced playfully as she raised an eyebrow. I mean, you could just let Enzo stew a little longer. Rolling her eyes, Tonja chopped fresh basil with precision, the blade scraping against the cutting board. It's not about stifling him. We need to clear the air. She could feel the tension coiling in her stomach, an electric current of anticipation. After the latest case, shrouded in shadows and life-altering revelations, clarity in her relationship with Enzo felt paramount. What else can we do? Dance around it forever? Rosie chuckled, her skepticism evident. Just remember that you two can be intense. It might not be just a conversation. No kidding. Tonja paused, glancing through the open window that framed the dusky skyline, her heart thudding softly. She worked to steady her breath, thinking of Enzo, always felt like standing on the edge of something exhilarating and terrifying all at once. But I can't dodge this any longer. In that moment, Enzo Arnaud appeared in the doorway, his tall figure silhouetted by the fading sunlight. The contrast of deep shadows and warm light played tricks on Tonja's heart, eliciting an involuntary thrill. He exuded a quiet strength, his shirt hugged his lean muscles, and his dark, intense gaze was fixed on Tonja, setting her pulse racing. Dinner smells amazing, ladies. His voice was low, smooth like the whiskey he favored. It floated through the cool air, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Just trying to fuel you for our next escapade, Rosie teased, mischief sparkling in her bright eyes. Though, between the two of you, I'm starting to think culinary disasters may be our only threat tonight. Tonja chuckled, but her gaze was fixed on Enzo, his appreciative smile igniting something deep within her. She felt exposed under the weight of his attention, an unspoken connection thrumming like a live wire between them. What's on the menu? Enzo asked, leaning against the doorframe, his posture easy, but his eyes, those mesmerizing depths, held a flicker of curiosity. Pasta, a classic, Tonja replied, her voice steady despite her racing thoughts. I figured it was time for a family dinner. Enzo stepped closer, the scent of his cologne, a mix of cedarwood and spice filling Tonja's senses, wrapping her in a tantalizing bubble. She noticed the subtle flex of his biceps as he leaned forward, hands gripping the edge of the counter, and a hesitant silence brewed in the air. Family, huh? He mused, tilting his head as he scrutinized her with a penetrating gaze that made her knees feel weak. Sounds serious. Rosie's light-hearted chuckle broke the tension. Oh, they have some serious talking to do before they're planning the kids' names, trust me. Tonja shot Rosie a playfully daggers look. Really now? Hey, just saying. Rosie raised her hands defensively, laughter bubbling forth. But Enzo remained focused on Tonja, the weight of the world seemingly lifted from their shoulders. You're avoiding the real talk, he said softly, the air heavy with meaning. We're at a crossroads, you know that, right? She felt her heart quicken, blood rushing through her ears. He was so close now, the heat from their bodies merging in the intimate space. She took a steadying breath. I do, and that's why. Before she could finish, the doorbell rang, slicing through the charged atmosphere like a knife. Rosie groaned, the moment dissipating, and she scuttled to the entrance. Who is it now? She called, clearly unimpressed. Tonja's gaze remained on Enzo, her pulse racing as she instinctively took a step closer, her voice lowering. I wanted to tell you that I'm scared. Scared of this us, this chaos. A little chaos can be good, Enzo murmured, his voice a velvet whisper. Embrace it. Just then, Rosie flung open the door, revealing Ishmael Devereaux, his enigmatic presence captivating and heavy with unvoiced intentions. He stepped inside, the unwelcome tension shifting again. I hope I'm not interrupting. Tonja's heart sank as she locked eyes with Enzo, her world spinning beneath her feet. Scene 79. Veil of Deceit. The sun dipped low, casting a molten glow across the cityscape where the skyline sliced sharply into the orange and violet horizon like a serrated edge. The scent of impending rain lingered in the air, mingling with the gasoline fumes wafting from the streets below, creating an aromatic cocktail that mirrored the chaotic thoughts swirling in Tonja Coleman's mind. She stood before the tall, reflective glass of the Quantico building, her silhouette a fierce presence cut against the backdrop of beauty and turmoil. A storm was on the horizon, both outside and within. Inside the dimly lit conference room, which buzzed with tension, a host of familiar faces, a patchwork of allies and frenemies, surrounded the vast oak table, papers strewn about like the remnants of a forgotten battle. Vice Detective Moreau sat hunched over a file marked with police tape, his brow furrowed as he dissected the latest evidence. Meanwhile, Amara Jennings, the tech-savvy analyst with piercing green eyes, leaned back in her chair, fingers poised above her laptop, anticipation radiating from her like heat waves. I'm telling you, it's not just a coincidence, Amara asserted, her voice filled with conviction. The last 3 victims had connections to Ishmael. Or it's just more old-fashioned sloppiness, grumbled Brian Lynn, the sarcastic forensic specialist, fiddling with a coffee cup that seemed more empty than full. This is a waste of time, people. We chase shadows while something real could be happening. Suddenly, the door swung open, drawing all eyes to Ishmael Devereaux, who slipped into the room as quietly as a ghost. His dark jacket framed his intense demeanor, the detective's cold gaze meeting Tonja's fierce stare across the table. They shared a moment, a magnetic spark that lit up unspoken territories between them, a blend of anxiety, desire, and unresolved tension thickening the air. Have you found anything? Tonja inquired, her voice steady, though her heart raced. It pulsed like thunder beneath her calm exterior. Enough to raise questions, Ishmael replied slowly, glancing at the gathered team before turning his full attention to her. But I think we need to dig deeper into possible connections with the syndicate. Tonja felt her skin prickle at the mention of the syndicate. Its shadowy presence was a terrifying undercurrent tied to her past. The room's atmosphere shifted, weighted with their burdens and the unsaid intentions that danced behind each gaze. Let them come, then. Rosie Santana, Tonja's vibrant partner, interjected with a hand on her hip. I mean, dark factions, they've never seen a team like ours. Heroic speeches won't protect you if you don't have a plan, Brian quipped, crossing his arms. He wasn't wrong, but the melancholy in his voice didn't escape Tonja. Everyone in the room carried caution, born from their histories, their traumas. Without warning, Amara's laptop pinged with an incoming alert. The sudden sound sliced through the charged silence like a knife, and the tension broke just slightly, replaced by a collective curiosity. They all leaned closer, breaths held as Amara typed furiously. New security footage. It came in from the apartment complex where the last victim lived, she announced, her voice tinged with adrenaline. Let's see if we can catch anything. As images flooded the screen, Tonja felt the heat of her connection to Ishmael spark again, and the unresolved tension hung between them. Was it just the pressure of the investigation, or was there something deeper? Ishmael, she began, her voice softer, laced with vulnerability. What do you see when you look at me? The room quieted as her questioning pierced the noise, holding everyone's attention. He shifted, a slight shrug of his shoulders, as if caught off guard but unfazed. A formidable detective, he said, but the way his eyes flickered toward her smile hinted at the layers below the surface. You're not just a partner, Tonja, you're a force. A moment of unexpected vulnerability stole through them. The air thickened again, charged, breathless. With the evidence taking more urgent precedence, she dared not press further, but there was so much bubbling beneath her cool facade. Tonja could feel the contradiction of needing answers yet fearing what they might reveal. Just then, the building shook as thunder rumbled, an ominous sound overhead that promised an unexpected storm. The lights flickered, nervous murmurs rippling through the group. Is it just me, or does it feel like the entire city is coming apart at the seams? Rosie commented with a half-hearted laugh, attempting to ease the tension that hung like fog. Let's just hope we're not stuck in the middle of it, Ishmael added, his expression unyielding, but a hint of a wry smile softened the gravity between them. Tonja's heart swayed in rhythm with the tempest outside, an unsettling mix of commotion, desire, and secrecy enveloping her. The conspiracy was alive and simmering, just as their connection seemed destined to ignite. Let's get back to work, she finished, voice steady, yet resolve wavering as their eyes connected once more, a silent promise pulsating between them, caught in the veils of deceit and desire. Scene 80, Building Trust. Tonja Coleman leaned against the cold concrete of the alleyway, a tension coiling tightly in her gut. It wasn't just the chill of the autumn air or the shadows of strangers that lurked in the city, but the weight of looming uncertainties that hung between her and Enzo Arnau. His dark eyes, usually an anchor amidst chaos, felt distant. She could see questions swimming there about her, about them. It's not just about the evidence, Enzo said, breaking the silence with a gravelly tone that reverberated off the alley walls. He stepped closer, the rush of city sounds fading away. The thrill of proximity sent an electric pulse through the air. Tonja shifted, attempting to mask the nervous tremor in her fingers by running them along the edge of a stacked crate beside her. We can't afford any distractions. Not now. She bit back the softer words that wanted to escape, words that tugged at her heart when he was near, words of trust and vulnerability. Enzo took another step, narrowing the space between them. His gaze lingered on her, and in the dim light, he looked more like a guardian than a partner. Tonja, he replied, his voice low but urgent. Trust is exactly what we need. The sincerity in his tone caused the small hairs on her neck to rise. He hunkered down in front of her, meeting her gaze with an intensity that felt like heat in the cool air. With a slight shake of her head, she moved to look past him, not wanting to see the way he searched her face for answers. You don't know what you're asking, she replied softly, but a spark ignited something deeper within her, challenging the very heart of her defenses. The tension in him surged palpable, and he leaned in closer, their breath mingling in the crisp air. And you don't know what you're missing out on, he said, his deep voice wrapping around her like a warm embrace. A heartbeat passed before he added, I know you've seen things that haunt you. A harsh laugh escaped her lips, cutting through the moment, paradoxically grounding her. You have no idea, she muttered. The memories crashed against her like waves against a rocky shore, fragments of a trauma that she guarded like a smoldering flame. Then let me in, he urged, his eyes searching hers for a glimmer of the trust she had built a fortress around. We're supposed to have each other's backs. Isn't that what partners do? Feeling the cusp of vulnerability surfacing, she stepped away but stumbled over a stray bottle, the sound echoing in the silence. Enzo's arm shot out, steadying her as he instinctively pulled her against him. The heat radiated from his body, enveloping her, igniting a different sort of tension that coiled tightly in her chest. See? I've got you, he whispered, the moment threading thicker between them. His breath brushed against her skin, and she felt a shiver travel down her spine. Tanja's resolve weakened as they stood there in the murky alley, the world distanced, reduced to just their heartbeats and muted whispers. There was a promise in his eyes, a glimmer of the connection they shared amid the chaos of their lives. She wanted to lean into it, to give herself the freedom to feel, yet an avalanche of unresolved fear held her back. "What if I can't trust you?" she murmured, while her heart raced unbidden at the gentleness of his gaze. Enzo didn't flinch. Instead, he brushed his thumb across her cheek, sending warmth cascading down to her toes. "Then let's build that trust." The sincerity in his voice softened her defenses. Without thinking, she closed the gap, drawn into his orbit despite her better judgment. He hesitated only a moment before leaning in, and when their lips met, it was tentative, electric. It wasn't the passionate affair she had imagined when daydreaming about stolen moments. No, this kiss held uncertainty wrapped in desire, a dangerous blend of trust and self-restraint that made her heart race. As they parted, inches away yet needing the space as they gasped for air, Tanja's palms trembled slightly at the bareness of what just transpired. She felt herself melting, and in that moment, time extended, thick with expectations. "What now?" she whispered, breathless. Enzo's gaze was unwavering. "Now we make this right." The alley echoed with the sound of a siren in the distance, pulling them back to the urgency of their mission. But within, a bridge was built, fragile yet steadfast. Scene 81. The Crossroads explained. The setting was charged with a frenetic energy, the night air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt and the distant wail of sirens cutting through the dampness like knives. Dim streetlights flickered in the shadows, casting an eerie glow over the deserted warehouse district, a maze of steel and remnants of urban decay. The atmosphere felt electric, taut with the weight of impending conflict, every sound amplified in the hollow stillness. Tonja Coleman stepped into the space between the buildings, her gaze sweeping the surroundings, every instinct on high alert. Muscles coiled tightly beneath her tailored jacket. She could hear the pounding of her own heart, a drumbeat echoing the tension that crackled in the air. Behind her, Enzo Arnau emerged, his tall figure stepping into the light, eyes sharp, vigilant. The breath between them held secrets, unspoken hopes balanced precariously against the looming danger. "You sure about this?" Enzo asked, his voice low but edged with a sincerity that belied any bravado. He stepped closer, the heat from his body mingling with the cool night air, sending a shiver of awareness down Tanja's spine. "Only one way to find out," she replied, her tone equally resolute, yet laced with an undercurrent of vulnerability that skimmed the surface of her bravado. She adjusted her collar, trying to ward off both the chill and the vulnerability crossing her emotions. As they approached the warehouse entrance, the shadows of their adversaries began to take form. Ishmael Devereaux loomed at the forefront, silhouetted against the flickering lights of the warehouse, a predator surveying the scene. His dark eyes glinted with a mix of mischief and intensity, an intricate mask concealing the complex layers beneath. "Tonja," he greeted, his voice smooth as silk but laden with something deeper. And Enzo, his gaze flicked from one to the other, measuring the bond they shared. "You knew we'd come," Tonja stated, her posture unwavering, though uncertainty pricked at the edges of her bravado. "A dance, my dear, is always anticipated," Ishmael replied with a wry smile, but there was a sharpness in his tone. "Tonight the truth gets unwrapped, each of us revealing what we hide." Before she could retort, Rosie's voice chimed in unexpectedly, disarming the moment entirely. "Well, aren't we dramatic?" she quipped, her light-hearted demeanor cutting through the tension like a refreshing breeze. "Can we not just give our hearts, skip to the endings, and see who walks out?" Tonja couldn't help but smile, if only for a second. In this world of mayhem, Rosie was the brightness that illuminated the dark corners. It was a fleeting reprieve before they homed in on the conflict ahead. Ishmael studied Tonja closely. The air thickened with the intensity of his gaze as if he could peel back the layers and see straight into her soul. "You're afraid." "That's rich coming from you," she shot back, tension taut between their voices, with Enzo stepping back slightly, sensing the intricate dance of power and hesitance. "What do you want, Ishmael?" Enzo interjected, a hardened edge in his tone as the stakes rose like vapor from the asphalt. A showdown or a sit-down? Both, Ishmael smirked, keeping his focus on Tonja. But tonight isn't only about justice. It's about passion, about the crossroads of choices that define us. You'll have to decide what matters most. The tension hung between them, a tangible thing that felt both intoxicating and threatening. Tanja took a step back, caught in the binds of unspoken history and emotion, every second vibrating with possibilities. Enzo stepped closer, sliding an arm around her waist protectively, his warmth anchoring her amidst the chaos. "Let's not dance in circles," he urged, his voice low, brushing against her cheek with a hint of intimacy. "I'm not leaving you again." Tanja took a steadying breath, feeling the warmth seeping into her core. Emotions she'd been carefully locking away began to shift. "Together, then," she whispered, the weight of Enzo's presence spiraling through the air, filling her with a warmth that danced like embers. Then the world erupted with movement. Ishmael's crew descended from the shadows, ready, and the gravity of their unspoken truths collided with the urgency of the night, spinning them into an uncertain fate. "You know," Rosie quipped as she spun to take cover, "I've always preferred a thriller over a drama." Their combined apprehensions flared into action, and as the first clash echoed, the crossroads of love and confrontation blurred in the chaos, their destinies tangled tighter around unexpected twists and revelations. Scene 82, in the depths. The hum of fluorescent lights flickered above, casting long shadows that danced across the cold concrete floor of the abandoned warehouse. The air was thick with the smell of rust and oil, an echo of the criminal activities that once thrived here. Tanja and Enzo stood near the edge of a cavernous room, surrounded by crates stacked haphazardly, remnants of a world they had yet to fully penetrate. "Why haven't you told me everything?" Tanja's voice sliced through the silence, her tone low but charged with tension. She crossed her arms tightly, her body language revealing defensiveness as her dark eyes bore into Enzo's. She couldn't ignore the pulsating chemistry between them, yet tonight it was overshadowed by the secrets they both suppressed. Enzo shifted, his jaw tightening imperceptibly as he glanced away, studying a distant corner like it held the answers to their unasked questions. The flames of a nearby torch flickered against his skin, highlighting the sharp lines of his strong profile. "There are things that go deeper than this syndicate," he replied, his voice gravelly and thoughtful. He took a step closer, drawn to her presence despite the barrier they had built. "Sometimes knowing too much can be dangerous, Tanja." Tanja rolled her eyes but felt the heat rising from where their bodies almost touched. "What's more dangerous? Not knowing? Or trusting a partner who isn't being honest?" The air crackled with unspoken thoughts, amplifying the tension that simmered between them. The dance of their hands almost reaching out for each other hung like a whisper, trembling just beneath the surface. "Trust is built, not given away freely," Enzo said, his gaze drawing back to hers. The vulnerability in his eyes cracked her armor just a little, an invitation buried beneath the weight of their circumstances. "But it takes time, you know that." She stepped forward, the sudden proximity igniting something both exhilarating and terrifying. "I don't have time, Enzo. We're neck deep in something that doesn't just threaten us, it threatens everyone we care about." Her voice softened, just for a moment, a window into her heart that she rarely opened. "Maybe we need to care less then." Enzo's words hung in the air, a challenge and a plea intertwined. More about the mission, less about the distractions. He dared to close the distance, warmth radiating off him as their breaths intertwined in the electric silence. "Distraction? Is that what you truly think of what we have?" Tanja's heart threatened to outpace her mind, her pulse racing from rising adrenaline as she tilted her chin upward, daring him to meet her gaze. "No," he responded quietly, his throat bobbing as his expression shifted from doubt to something deeper, more primal. He reached out, brushing a lock of hair from her face, the gentle touch igniting an inferno of emotion. "Then what is it?" she asked, sensing the shift, the way the atmosphere began to thrum with possibility. "What are we doing here, if not this?" A silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of unsaid confessions. Enzo leaned in closer, his breath warm against her cheek, as he murmured, "We're fighting for something bigger than ourselves. but that doesn't mean we can't." Before he could finish, Tonja surged into him, their mouths colliding with an urgency that had been building relentlessly. The kiss was like wildfire, immediate and consuming, each soft press and insistent caress, sparking more than just their lips, igniting aspirations and fears alike. It was a collision of longing and restraint, their bodies recognizing the urgency of the moment, even as their minds warned them of the chaos outside these walls. Her hands tangled in the fabric of his jacket, pulling him deeper into the embrace, as whispers of doubt faded into the background. The kiss deepened, the tension in them unraveling like the binding of a tightly coiled spring. If this was the end, if they were to dance dangerously around their feelings, she wanted no regrets. A world filled with conspiracies dimmed as they became reflected in each other's eyes, the beauty, the strength, all raw and shimmering. But Tonja, Enzo breathed against her lips, breaking the kiss reluctantly, his forehead resting against hers, their breaths mingling in the charged air. "We need to figure out our next move." It was then that Tonja realized they stood on the precipice of something monumental, not just in their investigation, but in their hearts. "Then, let's dive deeper," she whispered, her voice a mix of resolve and desire. And just like that, they were once more pulled back into the dark depths of their mission, bearing the weight of secrets and the promise of what could come next. Scene 83, Silent Agreements. Tonja stood by the window, staring out at the city below while the last vestiges of the sunset bathed her in a warm glow. Her long fingers traced the outline of the glass as she mulled over the latest discoveries about the crime syndicate, the evidence leading to someone very close.